Chapter 15. The Grand Adventure. I have a sense of a grand adventure, the most glorious of all. A veritable world looms before my inner gaze, unfolding hour by hour and day by day, and so that I cannot begin to record on paper what is being unfolded within the mind of by the shorthand of thought. Such joy and freedom shed their luster about that even this remaining bondage of action is losing progressively the sense of restriction. Within the grand abstraction, which is the one concrete reality, there is a silent communion, wordless, thoughtless, utterly formless. Yet within it I barely discern, like the dim paling that heralds a new dawn, the silent voices of others, separated here by both space and time, even distant time. There are other communities beyond this. There are far more satisfying companionships than are possible within the veil of gross matter. The silence is full and pregnant, and out of it flows the stream of all formations in endless variety: symphonies, philosophies, governments, sciences, arts, societies, and so on and on and on. Chapter 16. Alternative Roads to Recognition. While the book Cosmic Consciousness is a valuable compilation and analysis of the objectively discernible characteristics which mark those who have awakened to the cosmic sense, as the author calls it, yet Dr. Buick has covered only a part of the subject and misses entirely a phase of recognition that does not possess certain of the signs he has noted. Not all recognition carries in it its strain, the profound and sometimes intense joy. There are recognitions in which the element of joy is not conspicuous, and though present, may be too hidden to be revealed to the gaze of the observer, unless the latter is unusually acute in his perceptions. There is a science of recognition, though in large part it remains esoteric, but some of the signs may be uncovered by the uninitiated student if he seeks in the right place. Among the various races, the East Indians form the chief repository of this science, and the language employed, the Sanskrit, involves terms corresponding to concepts for which there are no real equivalents in our current Western languages. It will be necessary to turn to a small portion of this science to show how recognition may be more than one type. The ultimate reality is nameless, though word signs have been devised that point toward but do not define it. Among these is the word Sat, designating but not defining that which is neither being nor non-being. This is the only one reality, or rather, that which is neither one nor not one. I, the Atma, am identical with that. Hence the statement, the Atma is identical with the Brahman. This one reality is absolute consciousness and in absolute motion. Its highest representation is therefore a triad, and this has been called in Sanskrit Sat Chit Ananda. Chit is consciousness or knowledge in the highest sense. Ananda is bliss or love, again in the highest sense. But as already shown, pure bliss is pure creativeness, and as creativeness is motion in the ultimate sense of disintegrating and reintegrating form ceaselessly, we can see how Ananda becomes identical with ceaseless motion. Below this highest triad, there is a lower reflection, though still on a metaphysical level. This reflection abides in man as its highest aspect. It is known as Atma Buddhi Manas, Atma corresponding to Sat, Buddhi to Ananda, and Manas to Chit. Each one of these sets of three is often represented as an equilateral triangle, with the Atma or Sat at the highest apex and the base being parallel to the surface of the earth, or rather tangent, with Buddhi and Manas or Ananda and Chit at the other two vertices as follows. The equilateral form of the triangle indicates a symmetrical relationship, while the position of the upper vertex of Sat or Atma signifies that there with respect to each triangle is the ultimate. As a consequence, it follows that Atma is as accessible through Manas as through Buddhi, and likewise Sat through Chit as well as through Ananda. All of this is well above the personal man. Now, below the triad, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, there are innumerable roads leading toward recognition. But at the level of the Buddhi and Manas, there are two contrasting routes, and the third, which is a combination of the two, if a man reaches first to Buddhi and then to Atma, the I am, but has attained little unfoldment of Manas, intellectual principle, the recognition will manifest predominantly through joy and love. All such tend to see the Supreme as love, and this apparently is the more frequent development. But on the other hand, he who reaches to Atma through Manas and with but minor development of love principle will be illumined in terms of knowledge, but will know relatively little of the joy. For such a one, the Supreme is seen as knowledge or wisdom. The third, a combined road, is through Manas, thence through Buddhi to full recognition in the Atma. The Supreme then stands forth equally as wisdom, knowledge, and love, bliss. The latter is, of course, the most completely balanced road. But if the Atma is reached through Manas, then Buddhi can be awakened quite readily, or vice versa, if the appropriate effort is put forth. Thus, finally, the culminating completeness is also attained. Buddha is the outstanding example of the balanced recognition within historic times, and thus he is one equally great in knowledge and compassion. Immanuel Kant is a great example among Western peoples of a man who has attained something of recognition through Manas. As a result, his philosophy clears the way in the West in a sense analogous to that achieved by the thought of Shankara in the Orient, but unlike the latter, it is incomplete on a metaphysical side. Hegel partially completed this structure, but the whole of this falls short of the completeness of the pure Advaita Vedanta. Still, within this idealistic structure is to be found the best of genuinely spiritual knowledge, wisdom indigenous to the West. Kant's light is very clarifying, but there is lacking in it the substance, which is joy. This fact is revealed in his features and his writings, yet there is a very great and clear beauty in Kant. I, for one, am profoundly indebted to him and realize that depth more clearly than ever at the present time. Without him, I might have experienced, but I do not have understood nearly so well the meaning unfolded through the transition, being born as I am in a Western body and nurtured in a Western current of thought. I take this opportunity to take my acknowledgement to this great philosopher who could recognize and so well name the pure subjective moment of consciousness, that is, pure apperception. Is there any greater phrase in all philosophy than this? The synthetic, transcendental unity of pure apperception? He who penetrates this phrase and extracts from it its ultimate meaning will have attained the recognition. Among the earmarks of illumination that Dr. Buke has noted, Kant does not reveal, at least not conspicuously, the joy and the subjective light. But on the other hand, the moral elevation is marked. In fact, Kant has made one of the most important contributions, if not the most important, to the theory of ethics of any thinker in our present culture. And his primary ethical principle is one of the most lofty ever formulated by man. The intellectual illumination is stupendous. Few men, if any, in his history have ever surpassed the intellectual attitude attained by Immanuel Kant.